My name is Oliver, and I'm 30 years old. I live in Richmond, Virginia, and I've always loved the outdoors. Hiking, fishing, camping, anything that gets me away from the city for a while. Last fall, my friends Mia and Rachel convinced me to go camping deep in the Appalachian Mountains. We had done plenty of camping trips before, but this one would be different. We wanted something more remote, away from the usual campgrounds and trails. I should have known better. We set out on a crisp Friday morning, driving hours into the mountains until we reached a dirt road that led to a clearing surrounded by dense forest. It was beautiful, but eerily quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves, just silence. I even joked about how it felt like we were in a horror movie, but my friends just laughed it off. By the time we set up our tents and got a fire going, the sun was dipping below the horizon. We sat around the fire, laughing and roasting marshmallows, enjoying the peace that came with being so far from everything. It felt good to disconnect from the chaos of daily life. But then Mia froze mid-laugh. "Do you see that?" she whispered, pointing into the darkness beyond the firelight. Rachel and I turned to look. At first, I thought she was imagining things, but then I saw it too. A shadowy figure standing just outside the tree line, barely visible in the flickering light of the fire. "Hello?" I called out, my voice steady, but my heart racing. The figure didn't move. "Probably a hunter or something," Rachel said, though her voice wavered. I picked up a stick from the fire and held it like a torch, stepping closer to the edge of the clearing. "Hey, can we help you?" Still, no response. After what felt like an eternity, the figure turned and melted back into the darkness. I stood there for a moment, straining my ears for the sound of footsteps, but there was nothing. We tried to brush it off, convincing ourselves it was just a curious passerby. But deep down, I think we all felt the same creeping unease. Later that night, after we'd gone to bed, Rachel unzipped her tent and said she needed to use the bathroom. She grabbed her flashlight and walked off into the woods, promising to be right back. Mia and I waited, listening to the crackling of the fire and the occasional rustle of leaves. 5 minutes passed, then 10. "Should we check on her?" Mia asked, her voice tight. I nodded, grabbing my flashlight and calling out, "Rachel, you good?" No answer. We followed the faint beam of her flashlight in the distance, calling her name as we went. Eventually, we reached the creek, where her flashlight lay on the ground. Next to it was a torn piece of her jacket, caught on a branch. Panic set in. We searched the area, shouting her name over and over, but there was no sign of her. Mia was in tears, and I was trying to keep it together, but my hands were shaking as I dialed 911. The dispatcher said they'd send a search party, but it would take time to reach such a remote location. We had no choice but to wait. By dawn, the search party arrived. They combed through the woods, questioning us about what had happened. Hours later, one of the searchers radioed in, saying they'd found something near the fire pit. It was Rachel's body. Her face was pale, her eyes wide open in terror. Her neck and arms were covered in deep gashes, and her clothes were soaked in blood. The sight of her mutilated body is something I'll never be able to erase from my mind. The authorities couldn't explain what had happened. There were no animal tracks or signs of a struggle. They didn't find any evidence of another person in the area, but Mia and I knew what we saw: the shadow. We packed up immediately, leaving behind the tents and anything we couldn't carry. Neither of us could shake the feeling that we were being watched as we hiked back to the car. The silence in the forest was deafening, and every snap of a twig made us jump. Weeks later, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. I started researching the area and discovered that Rachel wasn't the first person to go missing there. Over the past 2 decades, several campers had vanished, their remains either never found or discovered in similarly gruesome conditions. One story stood out to me. It was about a local man who had gone mad after losing his family in a fire. He was said to roam the mountains, attacking anyone who crossed his path. The authorities never confirmed his existence, but locals swore he was real. To this day, I don't know what we encountered out there. I try to tell myself it was a deranged person living in the woods, but sometimes I wonder if it was something worse. I haven't been camping since. I don't think I ever will again. My name is Claire, and I'm 29 years old. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and I've always loved the outdoors. Camping, kayaking, and hiking have been my go-to ways to unwind from my job as a nurse. My boyfriend, Ethan, 31, is the same way, which is why we decided to take a weekend trip to a remote campsite near an isolated river about 2 hours from home. It was supposed to be peaceful, just the two of us and nature. It turned out to be anything but peaceful. We arrived late Friday afternoon. The place was beautiful. Dense trees surrounded a quiet, crystal-clear river. There wasn't a single soul around except for one man camped about 50 yards away. His tent was old and worn, and he sat by a small fire, staring at it blankly. At first, we thought nothing of it. People camp alone all the time, right? As we set up our tent and got ready to cook dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced over and saw the man staring right at us. Not just a quick glance, but a long, unblinking stare. I nudged Ethan and whispered, "That guy's creeping me out." Ethan, always the friendly one, waved at him. "Hey man," he called out. The man didn't respond. He just kept staring. "I'll go talk to him," Ethan said, grabbing a beer and walking over. I stayed by the tent, nervously watching their interaction. Ethan tried to strike up a conversation, but the man didn't say a word. He just smiled, this strange, unsettling smile, before turning and walking into the woods. Ethan came back, shrugging. "Weird guy, but harmless. Don't worry." I wasn't so sure. That night, we crawled into our tent and fell asleep to the sounds of the river. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to the sound of rustling outside. At first, I thought it was an animal, but then I heard soft, deliberate footsteps circling our tent. My heart started pounding. "Ethan," I whispered, shaking him awake. "Someone's out there." He groggily sat up, grabbing the flashlight. "Probably just that guy. I'll go tell him to leave us alone." "Don't," I begged, grabbing his arm. But Ethan, always brave to a fault, unzipped the tent and stepped outside. I waited, every second feeling like an eternity. I strained my ears but couldn't hear anything beyond the rustling leaves and the occasional snap of a twig. "Ethan?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response. Panicking, I grabbed the flashlight and stepped out into the cold night air. The campsite was empty, and Ethan was nowhere in sight. I called his name again, my voice echoing into the dark forest. Then I saw it, a faint glow coming from deeper in the woods. I followed the light, my hands shaking so badly I could barely keep the flashlight steady. When I reached the source, I stopped dead in my tracks. Ethan was tied to a tree, his head slumped forward, his shirt soaked in blood. I rushed to him, my legs barely able to move. "Ethan!" I cried, reaching out to touch him. He groaned softly, lifting his head just enough for me to see the word "run" carved into his chest. I gasped, tears streaming down my face as I fumbled with the ropes, freeing him. His breath was shallow, and he was too weak to stand, so I half carried, half dragged him back to our car. Every step, I felt like we were being watched, but I didn't dare look back. When we finally reached the car, I shoved Ethan into the passenger seat, jumped in, and slammed the doors. I turned the key, and the engine roared to life. As we sped down the dirt road, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the silent camper standing at the edge of the woods, his face illuminated by the car's taillights. He was smiling. I didn't stop driving until we reached the hospital. Ethan was rushed into surgery and thankfully survived. When he woke up, he told me what happened. The man had grabbed him from behind, dragged him into the woods, and tied him up. While carving the word into his chest, the man leaned in close and whispered, "You're lucky tonight." Then he disappeared, leaving Ethan there to bleed. The authorities searched the campsite but found nothing. The man, his tent, and even his fire were gone, like he'd never been there. To this day, the memory haunts me. I can still see that smile, the way it seemed to promise something worse if we ever crossed paths again. Ethan and I haven't been camping since, and I don't think we ever will. My name is Marcus, and I'm 28 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado, and I've always been close with my younger brother Liam, who's 25. We've been camping together since we were kids, something our dad used to do with us before he passed away. Last summer, Liam suggested we check out Pine Creek, a remote spot a few hours away, known for its beautiful scenery and peaceful isolation. I'd heard rumors about the place, stories about strange disappearances and creepy local legends, but I brushed them off. After all, we'd camped in plenty of remote spots before without any issues. When we arrived, the area was as beautiful as promised. Pine Creek ran clear and cold, and the dense forest around it was alive with the sounds of nature. We set up camp near the water, grilled some burgers, and spent the first night joking around by the fire. Everything felt normal. But on the second day, things started to feel off. As we explored the surrounding woods, we kept seeing strange things, crude stick figures hanging from the trees. They were made of twigs tied together with twine, and there were dozens of them scattered throughout the forest. At first, we laughed it off, assuming it was some kind of joke or an art project. But as the day went on, the uneasy feeling in my stomach grew stronger. "Creepy, huh?" Liam said, holding up one of the figures. "Yeah," I admitted. "Let's just stay close to camp tonight." That evening, as we sat by the fire, the woods felt unusually quiet. The usual chirping of crickets and rustling of leaves was gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. We tried to shake it off, talking and laughing to distract ourselves, but neither of us could ignore the feeling that we were being watched. We went to bed early, both too uneasy to stay up. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of something rustling outside the tent. At first, I thought it was Liam getting up to use the bathroom, but when I turned over, his sleeping bag was empty. "Liam?" I whispered, sitting up. No response. Grabbing my flashlight, I unzipped the tent and stepped out into the cool night air. The fire had burned down to embers, casting faint shadows across the trees. "Liam!" I called out, louder this time. Nothing. Panic set in as I searched the area, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. That's when I noticed it, a trail of blood leading away from the campsite. My heart pounded in my chest as I followed it, every step feeling heavier than the last. The trail led to a clearing about 100 yards from our tent. When I stepped into the open space, my flashlight caught something that made my stomach drop. Liam was tied to a tree, his head slumped forward, his throat slit. His shirt was soaked in blood, and on his chest was one of those stick figures, carefully placed. I froze, unable to breathe or think. It felt like the forest was closing in on me, the shadows growing darker and more menacing. "Liam," I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. But I knew he was gone. The sound of a twig snapping behind me jolted me back to reality. Spinning around, I shone my flashlight into the trees, but I couldn't see anyone. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, and I knew I had to get out of there. I ran back to the campsite, my legs barely able to carry me. Grabbing the car keys and my phone, I bolted for the car, not daring to look back. The drive to the nearest town felt like a blur, my hands shaking so badly I could barely keep the car on the road. When I reached the sheriff's office, I stumbled inside and tried to explain what had happened. A team was sent out to Pine Creek, but by the time they got there, the clearing was empty. Liam's body, the stick figures, even the blood trail, everything was gone. The investigation that followed uncovered some horrifying truths. Pine Creek had been the dumping ground for a cult's ritualistic murders back in the 1980s. The cult was known for leaving stick figures at their crime scenes, but they'd vanished decades ago, and no one had ever been caught. To this day, I don't know who or what was behind Liam's death. The only thing I'm sure of is that Pine Creek isn't just a place to camp. It's a place where something evil still lingers, waiting for its next victim. I haven't been camping since, and I never will again.